Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, and I'm reporting live from my little cabin in the woods, Murphy's Law, here in East Texas. And now we have as our special guest tonight, Beverly Willett, who is signed on from Savannah, Georgia. And she's got a wonderful book that's one of our bonus book club selections she's going to be talking about. So, hi, Beverly. How are you tonight?
Oh, I'm great. It's only about 100 here, but that's okay. I'm in the air conditioning.
It's very hot here, and it's even more humid. We have a very high heat index here in East Texas, but I'm amongst the trees like Betty, so it's not as bad as some people that are sitting out without a tree, but we're in the woods. So, but it is very humid, but we're excited to be here in a cool spot. It's cool because we have you on board, and it's cool because we're all sitting in our air conditioning, and we've got some of your friends here. We've got Peter, and is it Donja? How do you pronounce your name?
It's Donia, just like Sonia, but with a D.
Donia, like Sonia. Okay, Donia, welcome. Are you also in Savannah?
No, I am on the Oregon coast, and I have to warn everybody, I'll have to leave in about 10 minutes, but I at least wanted to say hi, and I'm delighted that I can watch it later.
Well, we have a lot of chapters up there in the Pacific Northwest. Peter, where are you coming in from? Oh, you're muted.
The Big Apple.
The Big Apple, the publishing house of the world, New York City, huh? Welcome.
That's right.
Welcome, welcome. I spent many a days there. I used to be a book publisher's rep and used to go to New York all the time. So, well, tonight we're here with Beverly. She's got an incredible story. And I want to begin with just that, Beverly. Our readers, they, read the book, and they're reading the book now because it's a bonus book club selection, but they want to know more about you. So you tell us a little bit about your background, why you wanted to become a writer, what was your childhood like? What is this, what made you write this story?
So my background, I lived most of my adult life in New York City after I became a lawyer, but I started out in the boondocks. In fact, I just had a family reunion with everyone in North Carolina, although I grew up in Southern Maryland, but it was very much rural and very Southern. And I was the first in the family to go to college. I mean, I read from the time I, could practically speak, because the bookmobile would come across the street from our house, and I would go over there every Saturday. I mean, that was the highlight of my week. I tell people, like my kids now, and they're like, really? That was like the highlight of your life. But it really was. It was just wonderful. And so, I just grew up with books. I mean, I loved books, but I do have to say, I never thought when I was little, or I didn't remember thinking about becoming a writer. Most girls in my town, went the traditional path. Or maybe they became a secretary. Some of us went to college, but that wasn't a great number of people. And becoming something like an artist or writer, something in the arts, was not something that was ever, my family ever encouraged. I was encouraged to do something practical. So I never really thought about it, because I thought, well, I'm going to do something practical. I studied political science, then I went to law school. I remember my grandfather saying, we've never had a lawyer in the family, and my father was an accountant, and my father, he died when I was 30, but I just absolutely adored him. And so, at some point I thought, well, you know what, let me see if I, maybe I'll like accounting. Well, that was just the worst, the worst. But, I was always really encouraged to do something practical. So, but, it's weird. I talk about this in my book. About this whole, year of sort of reclaiming my life is really what it was. My friends said to me, when you sell your house, you will be able to reclaim your life. And I didn't really understand what that meant. That was just some weird stuff to me. I was in a lot of pain. I had gone through a lot of suffering, and I didn't even know what that meant, how to do it, what it would look like. But at the end of the process, and I can talk about the book and the whole process, I realized I had always wanted to be a writer. And there was literally, in the process of decluttering my house and going through a lifetime of possessions, the evidence was right there in front of me. I mean, I discovered the evidence. And that was just amazing, because I had started writing. Was a lawyer, and then I stopped practicing law so that I could raise the kids. And so when they got in school, I wanted to do something part-time. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try my hand at writing parenting articles. So I wrote some parenting things, and I took some classes, and I liked it, but it didn't capture my passion. And I guess it's really weird, because it took me having a lot of suffering to really find something juicy to write about, something I could really sink my teeth in to write about, which was very weird. It's like the thing that you don't want becomes the thing that's the path to your new life, and is sort of your calling and feeds your passion. So that was all stuff that I had to sort of work out over many, many years and understand how that all fit together.
Yeah. So your children, are they grown now? Are they away from home? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they're grown. They're leading their own lives, and they still live in New York City, and I'm down here, so I don't get to see them as often as I'd like. But that's okay.
Well, the world's opening up. Hopefully, we'll be able to travel a little bit more this year. And besides our girlfriend weekend, our book club convention is going to be live this year. First time since 2020, since before COVID. And we are ready, aren't we, Betty? We are so ready, because we always have such a good time. Well, your story is amazing, and it's the resilience that you've what happens is, when this happens to an individual, you internalize and think you're the only one in the world this has happened to. And then you find out, for me, it's everybody I know. I know more women single now in their 50s and 60s than I don't remember this growing up. I don't, if a woman was alone, it's because her husband died. But I don't remember, divorce was not a, it just wasn't really done. My parents divorced, though, after years and years of marriage, but it's a hardship. And I love the word that you came up with. Everybody goes, "Oh, you've reinvented yourself, Kathy," so many times. And I go, no, I don't think so. I think I've just become the person I was supposed to be, and you have found your happiness, your bliss, and your writing, and you've just gone to town on this book. And tell for the people that have not read this book, tell us a little bit about your book. So
Okay.
those that are listening on YouTube, when we post this later, will be enticed to grab the book and read it voraciously.
Well, it's interesting that you say you know all these single women now, and you know all these people in midlife starting over by themselves. And that is true. I mean, I grew up not knowing anyone like that. And when my ex and I were a couple, I mean, we tended to go out with other couples and other families. And so I became sort of propelled into this new world that I didn't ask for, I didn't want, that was completely foreign and new to me. And what had happened, just to go back to my story and growing up, in a rural area. So, I had really sort of been groomed or told about the American dream. And to me, and I think to a lot of people, that, that means, achieving more than your parents did. I was the first one in my family to go to college, along with a cousin who's 2 months younger than me, who I just happened to see at a family reunion last weekend. And we talked about the fact that we were the first ones. So I went to college, and then I put myself through law school, and I was really, part of that whole American dream that I was raised on is you work hard. And if you work hard and you put your heart into things, then you're going to get all the things that we're told that, we're supposed to get from hard work. And so I got a law degree. I got a great job in New York City. I fell in love with, the dream guy at my first job. We had a whirlwind romance. We got married 9 months later. And then we had the 2 kids, they were 2 girls, not the boy and the girl, but we had the 2 kids. We socked away money. We had growing retirement accounts. We traveled. And then we get to this capstone of our American dream, the big house. And this was the big house in Brooklyn, where practically everybody in the world wants to live now. I mean, at the time, it wasn't what it is now, but I mean, we were living smack dab in the middle of the place where it's hotter than Manhattan. Sorry, Peter, but it's hotter than Manhattan now. And we had achieved all this because my ex had a very humble background too. And, it wasn't without hard work. It wasn't without problems in the marriage. I mean, I'm not going to give you that, a picture that it was all Cinderella and Prince Charming. It was not. But we got through the hardships and the difficulties, just like my parents did, and my aunts and my uncles and all those people I saw, at the reunion this past weekend. And so that's, that's where I was in life, and walking the kids to school and coming home and, making dinner, and then literally in one moment, my life just completely blew apart. I mean, it really, really was like somebody dropped a bomb in my life. And I describe that moment in my book, when I sensed something was wrong, and I took my ex-husband's cell phone out of his jacket pocket, and I turned it on, and there was just one love message after the next that I sat there and listened to at the kitchen table while he was upstairs asleep and the kids were asleep, and I had to get them up soon to get them ready to make their breakfast and walk them to school. And I'm listening to this voice that I've never heard from this total stranger who is in love with my ex-husband and having an affair. And I mean, literally, I was devastated, and I was devastated for a long, long time. Then he wound up suing me for divorce. He was the one having the affair. We didn't have no fault in New York at the time. So he had to prove I'd done something wrong, but he was the one having the affair. So he threw all these things in a complaint that were not true and sued me. And I had to find a lawyer. I went down to a nub. I was so skinny. I hadn't been that skinny since I was a kid. And I was in divorce court for the next almost 7 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, almost 7 years in divorce court. I'm not going to get into who's right or who's wrong, but we have seen trials.
And you're an
big
attorney.
screen.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a long time.
But nothing prepared me. I hadn't been a divorce attorney, and I didn't know anything about divorce court and family court. It wasn't anything that I had ever engaged in as an attorney, and I didn't really know people who had gone through that. So I knew nothing about it. I was totally, totally unprepared for it completely, and pretty much kind of reeling while I was taking care of the children, now practically by myself, and just trying to hold it all together. So I lost weight. I thought about, committing suicide. I wrote a story about that for USA Today. And at some point I realized that I needed to stand up for myself. And I had to find the strength in order to defend the charges against me, which I did. Long story, because this is sort of the backstory to my book. But we eventually divorced, and I got the house, but the money that was coming in, even though he earned a big salary, was not enough for me to pay all the bills. So I rented out part of the house. I started temping. There were no law jobs anymore because I had sort of aged out of the market. And then, you know, this was 2009. If you remember, in 2008, the market collapsed. Along with the market collapsing, sort of the legal market collapsed in New York. So there weren't any jobs for somebody who hadn't worked in a long time in the legal environment. So I was temping and I was being a single mom and just kind of living this life that was just fast paced. And when you're doing that, there's not a lot of time to think. there's really no time to grieve.
Surviving, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I did do some healing. I used to go on some meditation retreats. My church was very helpful, and the people there were so, you know, kind to me. But it wasn't until I could no longer afford to pay the mortgage, which was after my one daughter had gone to college and come back, and the other daughter was about to go. And so my nest was about to be completely empty. And I was faced with not being able to pay the mortgage anymore. And I had to sell the house. I had to put it on the market. I really thought that that was the last straw. You know, like everything has come crashing down in my life. And now I'm at, you know, I'm at midlife too. You know, I'm not even young anymore, you know, and I've had all knee operations, you know, so I don't look as good as I did. I don't move as well as I did. And it was just like, oh, and now I have to lose my home. You know, to me, it wasn't this real estate investment. This was my home that I kept, for my kids. I wanted them to grow up in their home with their neighbors and their neighborhood. And I'm glad I worked hard to make that happen, because I think, you know, the neighborhood and my neighbors were so instrumental in helping us. But I thought this was going to really take me down. I thought, okay, nothing's taken me down so far. I'm strong. This is the last straw. This is the thing, selling this house, that's going to take me down. So, you know, we had 4 floors, and then one floor was occupied by tenants. We had a roof, we had an outdoor space, and a cellar where we had basically taken stuff from the last co-op and moved it to the cellar, all the kids' stuff. My ex left stuff. People that had been in the house 2 or 3 times, cellars before, left crap. And here I am. And now it's my responsibility to clean it out. Oh, let me just tell you, the resentment that I felt. Oh, I just like, you know, this is not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. I mean, this is the head that I was in. So it just became something I had to do. I didn't really have a choice. And, you know, I remember I had a friend who was coming over to help me, and she, you know, and was like, where do we start? You know, where do you start? And she got out of a garbage bag and she just started throwing things away. Well, my heart was just pounding. And I said, you can't do that. You can't do that. And she said, you got to let me just throw stuff out, because we will never get this done. You got to get this, you know, you have to stage it. It's got to look like nobody lives there. And I knew in that moment, that was a very, very crucial moment for me. I knew, you know, my intuition told me that there's something in all of this for you. I knew that I was still in so much pain, which really kind of, that surprised me, because it had been, you know, it had been a decade since my ex had left me. So it surprised me that, and he was already married, and then I think he was on his way to being married the 3rd time. So it surprised me that I was still in so much pain a decade later. Like, where is all that coming from? You mean I didn't heal? You mean it's not behind me? It's not over? Well, I realized that I hadn't really grieved, because part of grieving is not just crying your eyes out and getting up and then, you know, facing the next day. Part of grieving is the process of letting go. And so I had not done that part of the grieving process, and I hadn't even realized that I hadn't done it. And so I thought, well, you know, just throwing it all in a bag and just, you know, staging it and getting out of here, I won't do it then either, unless I take the time to grieve. So I need to take the time to grieve. And the way to do that is to make peace with every item in this house. I mean, tens of thousands of items. I committed to looking at every item in my house and having it pass through my fingers. Now that literally almost took a year because I'd started in 2012 and sold by the end of 2013. But I did that. And so I was allowed myself to process everything, to literally process everything. And as I started to process everything, I learned a couple of things. I learned that as I was letting things go, literally putting them in the shredder, tossing them, taking the Salvation Army, holding a stoop sale, and then eventually literally letting people just come in and take stuff. I started to feel better. And I'm like, gee, I've been holding on to all this crap and I'm feeling better now that I'm letting it go. So I guess none of that made me happy. None of that kept me safe, because it didn't keep me safe from my marriage falling apart, my career, getting older, the kids not leaving. None of it kept me safe. And so I started to play with it. At some point, I realized, well, this is feeling pretty good. Like, could I? So I got some guy in that was from an antique dealer. And I remember thinking, I could, make at least enough money to maybe pay for the movers. Well, the antiques really weren't worth anything anymore. And he went through the whole house and he said, well, there's really nothing here. And I said, please take something. I just felt like I had to succeed in getting him to buy something. So he looked over and he saw this pink chair of mine and he said, well, I'll take that. Well, guess what? I loved the pink chair. I actually wanted to keep the pink chair. And this is the only thing this guy wants. Darn it. And so I said, okay, take it. And when it was gone, I didn't miss it. I didn't feel a loss at all. And that surprised me. I thought, really? Is that possible that I don't really feel a loss? And so I started giving away more stuff. And I started realizing that I had just been holding on so tight to everything, holding on to my way of life, holding on to my youth, holding on to my marriage, all of the stuff I'd been holding on to so tightly that I was causing my own pain, that's where my pain was coming from. And when I could literally let it go, I started emotionally letting it go. And I started feeling really light. I mean, I was happy again. I was like, wow. In the process of all of that, I start looking at this person that I am, because I'm looking at all the things that are a reflection of who I am and what I've done, and my life. And so my true self is starting to reflect back at me. And I'm seeing this woman that I actually really liked. She's really strong and she's capable and she's accomplished a lot. My older daughter, while she was, I guess she was studying for finals or something, I found some things and I called her up and I showed her and she said, I've never seen this. I had no idea you could do this. I had no idea you'd done that. I hadn't even shared that with her. And I'd forgotten about it myself. I had forgotten myself that I'd accomplished these things. I found out that I was this lighthearted person. I thought I was negative. I found out, no, I'm not. I'm not negative by nature. I'm positive by nature. I'm funny by nature. I'm happy by nature. All of these things it wasn't like that was the new me. That was really who I was, that I started to uncover in this whole process.
Wow, that's amazing. And this, from beginning to end, how long did this take?
So, this was literally, I guess, over a year, I would say. I just saw somebody else come on. I don't know.
Yeah. Another. Yeah.
And probably a little more than a year from the time that I actually started, looking through things. And then it got, the steamroller just started speeding up because I had to get the house on the market, and, time was passing, and there was another mortgage payment due, and then, at the very end of it, my friends were asking me, so, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? They were like concerned for me. Where are you going to live? How are you going to and I'm like, I don't know. And it was like, they had all this fear and concern for me that I didn't, because I knew I was fine. And I knew I would be fine no matter what I did and where I went. And so what I wound up doing, which is what happens at the end of the book, is that I got in my car, and I had been on vacation a few times to Savannah. And so I decided that I was going to spend the winter here because it was not going to be so cold. I was not spending another cold winter in New York when I had just done this yeoman's job with the house. And then I would figure out, while I was here, what I was going to do. And basically what happened is that I just never left.
Wow.
I just stayed.
Well, Savannah is beautiful, I have to tell you. All that, Charleston, Savannah, Beaufort, all of that, Hilton Head. It's one of my favorite places to go. But so how long have you been down in Savannah?
So that was the end of 2013. I went back to New York for the following summer because my daughter was coming home from college, and I just rented a place to be with her, and then got the stuff that I had left, which wasn't a lot, out of storage, and came back down in the fall of 2014 for good.
Wow. Aren't you proud of yourself?
Yes, I am.
That's amazing. Yeah, I went through something similar, except I had 1 month to move out of my house and sell my business, move out of my house. And I had no job and no income because my business was my livelihood. But I was forced to sell it because in Texas, it's if you start a business, your husband, doesn't matter who paid for it, your husband gets half of it. So I sold it, and but I didn't sell it for what I thought I'd get for it. I sold it for $2,000. That's all I could get. So he got 1,000 and I got 1,000. I owned a hair salon bookstore. True story.
Wow.
So, and I left with the clothes on my back and a 15-year-old car. And I now own my own house. I own my car. I went back to college. I finished school. I'm a working artist and run the International Book Club. I tell people, if you don't think you can do it, read Beverly's book and read mine. It'll be coming out soon. But the thing about it is, we don't realize how little we really need. We really don't need a whole lot. So what I did was I bought a 1,000 square foot cabin. So only took what would fit in it. And then I called a friend of mine who ran an auction house that said, come and get it. And they just loaded up everything he thought he could sell in a semi. No kidding. But I tried to sell all the brand new books in my shop, and I couldn't even give them away. Isn't that sad? They were
Well,
yeah.
I mean, there was so much that I tried to sell too. And then it was at the end, I was just like, let people take it away. Let people take it. And there was a guy I met on Facebook who was going through a really bad divorce, and he had a lot of kids. And I had this big, beautiful couch, L-shaped couch. And I said, come get it. And he sent me a message about a year ago, and he said, that couch really served me well because myself and all the kids, we could all sit on it. And so, for me, there were these stories that came out of it too, with the things that I eventually gave to other people. And oh my gosh, the books, you talk about books too, the books that I left on my stoop, I would leave books on my stoop at night, and the next morning they would be gone. Well, Brooklyn, Brooklyn is, more people read in Brooklyn than anywhere, and so I just remember imagining that all the books that I had, that were my books, my precious books, they were going into homes all over Brooklyn, and they are in homes all over Brooklyn. And so isn't that, it's just an amazing thing to think that these possessions, have this other life. And so I guess, now when you say how much do we really need? I mean, that was the thing. That was one of the things I started thinking about. And then once I realized that I wasn't attached to those things anymore, I was able to keep some of the things that I liked. And some of the things that, the kids said, well, maybe one day we'd like to have that or whatever. Because at that point, I wasn't really attached to them. I knew that, my life wasn't going to depend on them, wasn't going to, live or die on those things. And so therefore, then they just became things that I could enjoy. And if I lost them, I lost them. And if I had them, I could enjoy them. And so it really taught me a new way of interacting with things. I would also have to say is that the things that I learned, I learned that everything was the nature of change and uncertainty. And if I didn't really embrace that in my heart, if I really didn't learn that lesson, that the next time, maybe something would take me down. And I have had so many things happen since then. Really, really, I've lost a lot of people. I've had a lot of health issues myself. My house actually had mold and I had to evacuate it during COVID.
Oh, no.
It had to
Oh,
be
man.
half rebuilt. Now that wasn't fun and wasn't pleasant, but none of these things had the power to take me down again, and in the way that I had been before. So if I hadn't gone through all of that, I wouldn't have really just learned and understood the nature that their life is uncertain and these things can happen. And if we let them take us down, then they will. So so that was really, and then my mom died, and then I had to help clean out her house. So
I have a real distorted sense of humor because now it's all just hilarious to me. I think, oh my
see,
God.
I know. See, we're
you
laughing
get,
about
you
this.
get almost like, I don't know. I've had long conversations with Pat Conroy about this because he had a very distorted sense of humor because of the way he was brought up, and we had some similarities, and we could share stories and we just laugh because that's what you do. You just laugh about life situations because you can either look at the world as either Debbie Downer, or you can go, that's not going to define me. So yeah, when my dad died, right after my divorce, I said, oh my God, is this it for me? And I said, nope. And I got in my car on my birthday, August 27th, and I drove to the University of Texas. And I walked into that admissions office and I said, I know school starts tomorrow. I want to be there. He goes, well, you can't do it like that. You have to go online. I said, sir, he was a young guy. I said, let me tell you what I just went through. And by the time it's done, I was in 8 o'clock class the next day. And it's just funny to me now because he must have thought I was a crazy woman. But I was, because I was determined that I wasn't going to let that define me, what happened to me. And I love guys. I love all my friends. I don't have any bad will against anybody. I just feel like you feel like you're forged by fire and you're steel. You can just handle anything. So when COVID came, that was pretty devastating. And I've lost so many friends, and I do not take one day for granted because we're still here, everybody. We're all still here. And how many of our friends and family and people, are gone. So, and, Betty's had some health scares. We've all been through some things, but we kind of hang on to each other, don't we, Betty? Prop each other up. But
that doesn't take us down makes us stronger.
Absolutely. And we try
every time.
We try to, the one thing about my book club and my authors and everybody rallied around me. I mean, it was a tough time, but I got through it. And I have to tell you, I have the best friends in the whole wide world. And,
well, one thing my grandmother used to say was, and it came to pass, or this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And she said, it might take a while. It may not be easy, but it will pass.
My favorite line is wait for it. Because, I've been there where I felt like this is it. I can't take it anymore. I've had many moments like that in my life. But if you wait for it, something really wonderful happens like this. Like here we are talking about your book, and you're in Savannah and you're in New York, you're in Decatur. We're all just having this wonderful conversation. And that's really what's important in life is, the relationships that, where you build with each other. Some come and some go, some go harder than others, but I just laugh about it now because I made it, and so did you, Beverly. I'm so
Well, I found,
excited.
it was interesting moving here because, I've had friends visit and they'd say, how do you know so many people and, and how did you get involved and whatever? And I said, well, I really didn't try. I think there have been times in my life in the past where, I've tried hard, whatever. And I said, I felt like that I wasn't really trying to make friends. People just appeared. And then all of a sudden I had another friend, and then I got involved in this, and then I got involved in that. And I said, it just kind of happened organically. It really, there was no plan to it. There was no plan to go out and make friends and get involved and have the next thing. A life just sort of just grew up around me. Um, and and then I find too, as you say, I mean, I've had some friends who have moved away, and I have another good friend who, because of her husband's job, they've got to move, and we're very, very close. And, I hate to see her leave, but, the new things have come into my life. So I try not to get afraid anymore, because I lived so long in that fear. And I was doing a podcast last week, and I was telling this host that, when my ex first left, and there were those early days of being a single mother, and, we'd had couple friends before. So I still had some of those women that were friends of mine, but I didn't go out with the couples anymore. And it was a very weird time. We didn't do things as a family. And I was really scared, like, for the weekend to come, because I needed to do something. I needed something to occupy my mind. I didn't want to just watch TV. And so, I did find some other single women who'd gone through a divorce or were going through a divorce, and, we'd do things. And then at some point I realized that if I was always so scared that I had to fill up my time and be very conscious of filling my time because I was afraid for there to be this space, okay, that something was wrong with that, okay, and I decided to play with it and just not book anything. And, I would find, maybe an old friend would come to town who I hadn't seen. And if I'd had something else to do, I wouldn't have been able to see them, or an opportunity, so I do that now. And sometimes when I get to the point where, oh, there's another friend that's going, and this loss and that, and I get a little anxious, I try and remember that time, and I say, don't worry about it. Worrying about it is going to cause stress, and things will come along in their own time and naturally. And they do. And they do. So, and that's the really cool thing, because they're just, there are all these pleasant surprises that happen from time to time that
Well,
wouldn't otherwise.
I can imagine, since your book came out, you've been getting lots of letters and emails and messages about people sharing their stories. Has that happened to you?
Yes, and and one of the reasons why I wrote the book is I really wanted to share my story. I really don't think that we have enough midlife stories out there about starting over, and we don't have enough realistic stories.
Right.
I don't want to say anything negative about other books, but we have a lot of these stories of starting over that are not really realistic for most people. And so I think we need more ordinary people, starting over. We need more realistic stories. And I think we need more stories that don't talk about starting over by, finding the next partner or whatever, because that's not the way to heal. That's not the way to heal, because, maybe it won't work out with that partner. So we have a lot of books that give those kinds of messages, which are really kind of messages about replacing something else that you've lost. And that's just setting yourself up for failure. That's not the way to do it. So I think we need more stories like that really show people how to let go and where their pain is coming from. So when I realized people would come to me, because I used to write very early on about the loss of my marriage, going through a divorce and trying to save my marriage, actually, originally. And people would come to me and they'd say, oh, I'm going through divorce too, and my ex sued me, and what can you do to help me save my marriage? And I hadn't been able to save mine. I could point to some therapy websites. I could point to some books and things like that, but I hadn't been able to do it myself, and I wasn't a therapist. And I started to feel really anxious because I wanted to give something that someone could realistically hold on to. And that eventually became the story of how I was able to heal. I mentioned very early on that I even contemplated suicide, which for me, knowing the kind of person that I am, that I rediscovered that I am, that's just like not me at all. That is like the complete opposite from who I am. And that really, really scared me. And at some point I realized that I wanted to write about that. And I've had lots of people, especially during COVID, who wrote to me and said, I had these thoughts and I Googled and your article came up.
Wow,
and they have said, thank you. And I can't even tell you how humbled I am and how thankful that I was able to, have the courage to write it, because that was a very hard part of my book, and a very difficult article to write. But I wanted to put that out there. I just had a feeling that, that there were others out there that were feeling the same thing.
Yes, Betty.
Well, do you feel like this is a purpose that you were, maybe this was why you went through this, that this was a purpose that you fulfilled to possibly help other people?
I really do. I absolutely do. And sometimes, even now, but especially early on, I would say, why do I have to be the one to suffer in order to do this? And so I have to really keep my strength up for that and remind myself about that. Because, one thing I realized too, is that if there would be no purpose from my suffering at all, if there would be no purpose, nothing good that came from it, that really was a waste. That was just a complete waste of suffering if I couldn't find some purpose out of it. And so that is absolutely true.
Well, I think you've served it well.
Yes.
Because you're telling a story that is with the down and dirty, the raw and gritty feelings, and you've just let people know what it's really like. No sugarcoating, like you say, some of these stories do tell. When you sugarcoat something, often, like you say, that is not the answer. You have to have, I think, the knowledge that someone else has experienced that pain that you have too, and how they're coping and working through it, and use that as an example sometimes.
That's why reading is so important, because
Oh, absolutely.
when things happen to you in your life, when you read other people that have had the same experience, you go, well, they did it, I can do this, But if you don't have anybody telling you, that's why I've always been such a voracious reader. I'm always trying to figure things out. And I don't know if you ever really do, but you come to a place where you learn how to accept the life's, challenges and move forward. And I just try to set goals for myself that I get excited about. Like, Mandy Haynes, who's, my executive director, and we set a goal that we're going to try to figure out how to make Girlfriend Weekend live in the time of COVID. And it just so happened that everything kind of has, we want to be careful and we want everybody to take all necessary precautions, but I'm really excited. I haven't seen all my friends since 2020, and we live for this weekend, don't we, Betty? I mean,
Wait a minute, it was 2019. No, it was 2020.
2020.
That's right. That's right.
At the end of it, I came out
Yeah.
down with full-blown diabetes at the time of COVID. So
Yeah.
I will never forget, 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
But so when we finally figured out how we could do it and where we were going to do it, it's like nobody can hold me back now. I'm just excited, and then I'm an artist now. So the world has opened up for me now doing, exhibitions and stuff where it was dead and it was hard because people weren't buying art online. But I've learned that I can live on very little. And in the midst of all this, we had an ice storm that just pretty much destroyed the roofs on my house and my studio, my camper, blew all the pipes in my cabin, and my insurance said they didn't cover it. And you know what? I made it through that. I made it through it. I don't know how. I really do know how. I think that we try to control our lives so much that we think we have to fix everything. But I think somebody else is in charge. And I think if we just put our faith in whatever your faith is, in the higher being, God has taken good care of me, because I really don't know. I mean, I left with the clothes on my back and a job that was going to pay me less than $10,000 a year as a youth group director at a church, and no place to live, and this old car. And I did it. I just kept getting jobs. I'm not allergic to work.
That's that last thing that I say in my TED talk, which is, really sort of a mini version of my book. And that is, the last thing that you have to do is you have to leap. I mean, there's not a lot that we have control over. I mean, not really. We really don't have control over anything. And we do what we can. And then there's that last piece, and that's just that leap. We have to, that's the other part, the other key. Because that's acceptance that we can't control and we don't control.
Talk about that.
And I guess I didn't realize that either, because I've always been a fixer. I've always been the mom, the fixer, and the doer, and the whatever.
Always. But tell us about the TED Talk, because that was, I've watched a zillion of them. I love them, and I know a lot of authors that have gotten to do TED Talks. But I think it's kind of a life-changing event for the speaker too, don't you think?
Oh, it's like, and I guess, so I did that in 2016, and so I had moved to Savannah at the end of 2013, and then, moved into my place in 2014. And there had been a call the year before, and I applied, and I didn't get in. And then there was a call the following year, and I applied, and I got accepted. And at that point, it was kind of like I didn't have this fear factor in my life. I mean, I have normal fear. We all should have normal fear of things that can really hurt us. But I felt so free of all that heavy kind of fear that I really wasn't, I wasn't really afraid at all. I would just, except for the moment before I went on stage.
Oh boy.
The moment before I went on stage, I guess I had this it was almost like, how your brain can sort of take over intellectually and say, what are you about to do? And you think you can go out there on stage and my talk was like 12 and a half minutes. And, you know, I forget people's names sometimes now, you know, and you're going to remember all of this, and you're supposed to just be natural and, you know,
authentic and
yeah, they tell you just have a conversation. Well, it's like, but what if I blank out? What if absolutely everything? I mean, that is like the thought that goes through your brain. You know, about a minute before I was about to go out. And so I said to my coach who was back there, I just said, oh my God, I can't believe this. And she said, have you ever done the power pose? And well, I hadn't, which is basically putting your hands on your hips and walking back and forth. And so when you do the power pose,
oh, I'm
what
going to do that.
happens?
Yes.
I'm taking
Yes.
You know,
I'm
you
a
know,
former,
here's what
I'm a
you do.
former HR person, and I tell
So you
people when
know
they
this.
interview, put your hands on your hips and say, I've got this.
Oh, okay. So this is really okay. So, but what happens is that you put your hands on your hips and you stand up taller, which is my mother, my whole life. Don't slouch, stand up taller. You stand up taller. And what also happens is your heart goes before you. So your heart goes out too. So, you know, that head part of you that's saying, you can't do this and you're going to forget it, whatever. Well, that takes a back seat because your heart now is in front. Okay. Your heart is in front of you. And so, and there's really like this physical connection with this emotional, intellectual thing that's all going on at the same time. And she said, that's it. And then I heard my name, and then the curtains opened and I went out there. And it was literally, it was just that fast, so that I took that with me, and I had a conversation with the audience, and it was, I just felt like, oh my gosh, this is what it's like to feel powerful. But
It's
in a
called
good
the Wonder
way.
Woman pose.
Yeah, okay.
Wonder Woman.
The Wonder Woman pose. Yep.
Hilarious.
I felt so natural. I felt so in control. I felt it was just, oh, it was just amazing. It was an amazing experience.
I have been told on occasion that I am evidently very self-confident, and I go, oh, it's a facade. I really do this so I can bolster my courage. But you know, now that I'm older, a lot of things don't scare me like they used to. And I had a wonderful speech and drama teacher in high school who told us that go do your speech, do your you know, your performance. Most people will only remember about 25% of it anyway. And so don't worry if you make a slight mistake or whatever, you know. So, you know, that's the way I've done my whole career in HR, and having to stand up in front of, you know, several employees and managers and everything else, is I knew my job, and I knew it well, and I conveyed the facts that they needed to know, and they knew that I knew what I was doing. But I did that often. You know, I would say, okay, you've got this, because it is nerve-wracking to get up in front of a lot of people. Doesn't matter if you know your audience or not.
Well, one thing she also said is, she said, you know, they want you to succeed. They want, you know, they're there for you. They're there to listen to you. They're not your critics. They're there to support you. And so that was a different way of thinking about it too. It wasn't like I was going out there to convince a bunch of people on something, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so that was good.
That's really amazing. Well, it's always interesting. I love to listen to them. I mean, I could just spend a whole day just watching TED Talks. I think they're fascinating. So thank you for sharing. And I know you've been sharing it on the blog. And so what direction are you going to be going now that you've done this? Where are you headed? What you're writing?
Well, I just finished my first novel, and I am going to start looking for an agent. So I have written my first piece of fiction since I was age 13.
Oh my God. Good for you. Well, if you were in Texas
and I
right
had
now,
I was writing it, during COVID, and I just had this idea, and I have just been having a blast. I just never thought I would write fiction, and it's kind of a legal thriller. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, in Texas right now, this weekend is the agents and editors conference in Austin with the Writers League of Texas. It's fantastic. I send all my Texas authors down there looking for agents and editors and they've had great success. So I don't know if every other state does this, but Texas does it in a big way, and it's fantastic. In fact, Nick Wade is going to be speaking down there at one of our authors at the conference. It's really fun. Well, the best thing I would suggest to you is network with all the authors at Girlfriend Weekend. I know one little author who came to Girlfriend Weekend about 2 or 3 weeks after she came. Pat Conroy called her and said he was impressed with her book and did she need some help? And he volunteered to help her. And I can tell you that Leela Meacham reached out to several authors at Girlfriend Weekend and said, how can I help you? You're just getting started. We have a lot of authors that are famous that really spend a great deal of time mentoring to our newbies. So it's a wonderful place to network. And I get story after story of, I sat with this author and she helps me all the way. Catherine Casey. I mean, just all kinds of wonderful. Jamie Ford went and said, let me take you girls out to lunch, took a whole book club. It's just a wonderful thing that happens. I go to a lot of conferences and a lot of book clubs, or I did before COVID. And the one thing I notice is everybody gets up and pontificates about how great their book is, and they read a selection, but you really don't know who these people are. I spend a great deal of time trying to find out who the people are who wrote the stories. And when people find out who you are, then you got your fan base, I mean, how many authors now are your best friends, Betty Koval? I mean, you can email them anytime. Oh, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
They're not just best friends, they're cousins now.
Well,
we made this one thing. We said we're just one great big reading family, and Claire Fullerton and I started calling each other cousin. And the next year, everybody wanted to know, are y'all really cousins? And I said, well, we are in the book world. And
I
so
call it my book
ones.
family, man.
That's right. We're family. We're
just
family.
like
It's like
family.
one big family reunion when you go to the Girlfriend Weekend.
And we do a lot of crazy stuff. So as you can tell, I'm a very colorful.
Oh, by the way, I know we're running for time. I forgot.
Yes. Oh, yay.
So,
I have a question for you. What is behind you on that chair? I'm dying to know. What is
A
this?
palm tree.
What is this chair? I'm dying to see it.
Oh, how
Is this a
cute a
chair?
pineapple.
Oh my God, I'm in love
it's a
with
pineapple.
your
I love
chair
it.
is a pine. Well, you can see all my arts on the wall behind me, but I love whimsical.
Well, I did bring that with me. And I have an apple chair, a strawberry, and a watermelon. And
Wow.
and also, for some reason, I got rid of so much stuff, but for some reason, I kept this crown and this crown.
No,
Oh,
where did you
cool.
get
When I
those?
left New York, I never thought I'd have an opportunity to wear these crowns again, but something just told me that I needed to save.
Where did you
Okay.
get what's the story about these crowns?
The story is in the a work in progress, gowns and crowns.
Oh,
So
yeah.
people have to
Yeah.
read my
I have to
story.
go back and read that again.
Yes, you have to go back and read that. Gowns
Fantastic.
and crowns.
I love it because, I always wanted to wear one because, I grew up in a family where we lived to watch the Miss America pageant. And I just thought it was totally unfair that you know, you're a product of your parents' genes, and I did not get the waist gene. You know, I'm built like a boy, straight up and down. And my mother had like a 21-inch waist, and you know, and I thought, well, that's why the Pulpwood Queens wear tiaras, because we're beautiful within, because we're readers, because, and my story about that is in my first book too, about being in the Miss Eureka pageant, which was forced upon me by my mother. The judges laughed at me when they read my measurements. Was I walked down the, you know, thing. They laughed. And you know how hard that is for a 15-year-old, you know, to have somebody laugh at your measurements. And I'm still mad at those guys. I still know where they are. One of them's one of my best friend's older brother who owns an insurance company. But they laughed at me, and I just thought, we're a product of our parents' genes. I got my dad's waist, okay? I didn't get my mom's. So that's why we wear the crown, because we're beautiful within, because we're readers. And it just so happens some of us are pretty good looking on the outside too. So, but you know
Well,
what?
I'm hoping I can come to Girlfriends Weekend, and I have other crowns that I have bought since I came to Savannah. Here's another one.
Oh my gosh. Well, you are ready, girl.
I mean, I never knew that this whole life would just open up for me, and that I would start playing dress up again. But
we play dress up again.
That was a part of what I used to love to do and love to do with my girls when they were little. And now it's a part of my life again.
Well, it's what happens to us is as we grow older, we forget how to play. And, you know, I grew up, you do too. We grew up in a generation where we still had our mother's stay-at-home housewife 1950s mentality. But I grew up in the 70s where, you know, it was just past women's lib and, you know, get your own career. I mean, when I went to college, my counselor asked me who was I getting married out of high school. And I go, I've never really even gone with anybody. Why get married, you know? And I said, no, I'm going to see the world. I want to become an airline stewardess. He goes, no, you can't do that. I go, why not? He goes, because you have to join the military. All this stuff was just a big bunch of bull, and I knew it. And he said, no, you're going to Kansas State University. You're already enrolled. Your parents have signed the paperwork, and you're going to be an elementary ed teacher. And that didn't fly with me. So I found out I'm a lot more independent than, you know, I switched to design major, but I found out that I'm a little bit too independent for most people's thinking. Because I have things I want to do and places I want to go. And I think everybody should. And that's why they need to read your book. And, you know, I loaned your book to my daughter, and I don't even have it here to show. So hold it up.
I'll hold up mine. I've got mine
Hold
here.
up. Disassembly required. Everybody needs to read this book, both men and women, because, you know, people say, well, that's such a guy's book or that's such a woman's book. And I go, how are you ever going to know about the opposite sex if you don't read their books?
Well, I have guys write me, you know, email me that, you know, they've read my book. So I don't consider this a woman's book.
Well,
Yeah.
I have people have,
So
I remember handing Stephen Colbert my book at Grand Central's launch. We both were published by the same person. And he said, oh, this is a pink book. It looks like something my mother would like. And I said, well, I will have you know that I probably made the Guinness Book of World Records for the most blurbs, and most of them were from men. So you might want to read the book. And he goes, well, I guess you told me. I said, don't judge a book by its cover, man. And
Right.
he just laughed. He just laughed. He's a cool guy. But, you know,
I have to go.
Oh, okay, Betty, it's time. It's time.
Yes.
Peter, thank you.
Nice to meet you, Beverly, and you too,
Nice to meet
Peter.
you. Thank you for
You
coming.
never know what's going to happen at our book club meetings, but it's time to go. So we'll be watching your blog. The Pulpwood Queen presents her picks. She's been posting multiple times. So thank you for posting, and we'll see him tomorrow. And I can't wait to see what you have to say. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you, Peter.
everybody.
We need to catch up, Peter.
Yay!
Yes, we should, Beverly. And thank you, ladies, for letting me listen in to the.
But you're
late
not from
evening.
originally from New York. Where are you from, Peter?
I am from the mother country, of course.
Aha, it's a little bit of the tone that you have. Yes, yes.
Well,
well,
I can't help it. That's,
No, I can't help it that I talk Kansas, California, Texas. So, those are the three places I've lived in my life. It just comes out. And whenever
yeah,
I
very
go those
distinctive.
places, it comes out even more. So thank you for joining us. Come back again. We have a lot of fun at book club, and we usually have more, but this summer has been different. So thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. And it's all about the story. So bye-bye for now, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
bye, bye.